The restaurant was warm and buzzing, filled with the low hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and bursts of laughter that belonged to everyone but her. Emily sat by the window, a single plate of pasta in front of her, twirling the fork slowly, not because she wasn't hungry, but because she hated how empty it felt, being there alone. She told herself she was fine with solitude, but tonight the silence felt heavier. She was halfway through her meal when she noticed it. Eyes. A man at the far side of the restaurant had been staring too long, his gaze too sharp, too unsettling. She shifted in her seat, adjusted her scarf, and prayed he'd lose interest. Instead, he stood. Her stomach tightened. And then, a gentle voice brushed against her ear. "Pretend I'm your boyfriend." Emily froze, fork midair, before she turned to see a tall man with kind brown eyes standing beside her table. He wasn't smiling, but his tone was calm, reassuring, almost protective. Without waiting for her answer, he slipped into the empty chair across from her, as though they had always been together. Her pulse raced. For a moment, she thought of pushing him away. But when she glanced over his shoulder and saw the man who'd been watching her hesitate, then retreat to his seat, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Sorry if I startled you," the stranger said softly, keeping his voice low so only she could hear. "I just noticed that guy wouldn't stop staring. Thought you might need an exit." Emily studied him cautiously. He had a weathered leather jacket, a day's worth of stubble, and hands that looked like they belonged to someone who worked hard for a living. But his eyes, they weren't invasive or demanding. They were safe. "Thank you," she whispered back, her shoulders relaxing. For the next half hour, they carried on the most unexpected dinner. He introduced himself as Daniel, a firefighter visiting from out of town. They talked about silly things first, bad coffee, travel mishaps, the restaurant's noisy atmosphere, but slowly, the conversation deepened. She told him how she had moved to the city a year ago, how the loneliness sometimes crept in despite her busy life, and how she had once loved coming to restaurants but now often felt like a spotlight was on her whenever she ate alone. Daniel listened, really listened, the way people rarely did. And in return, he shared stories of long shifts, of holding strangers' hands during their worst moments, of the quiet weight that never quite left him after a rescue. By the time their plates were cleared, Emily had nearly forgotten the fear that had started the evening. She wasn't alone anymore, at least not in this moment. When the check arrived, she reached for it, but Daniel shook his head. "You've already paid enough tonight," he said gently. She didn't argue. As they stood to leave, Emily glanced around. The man who had made her uneasy earlier was gone. Outside, the night was crisp, the streetlights glowing in the drizzle. She turned to Daniel, ready to thank him again, but he stopped her with a small shake of his head. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Just promise me one thing, don't stop going out, don't stop living your life. The world's a lot less scary when you remember there are people who've got your back, even strangers." Emily felt her throat tighten, a lump of emotion she hadn't expected. She managed a smile. "I'll remember that." He gave her a small wave and disappeared into the night, leaving her standing on the sidewalk, warmed not by the wine or the dinner, but by the quiet truth that kindness could arrive in the most unexpected forms, at the exact moment it was needed most.